Hi, it's Neil here. Sorry, we seem to be having one or two issues with our Facebook Live connection this evening, but let's see if we can do this second time round. Tonight we're talking about when you know you're losing your health. Do you really need to be ill? Is illness inevitable? Is it unavoidable? Or is it a fait accompli? Or can you do something about it? Does the body give you early warning signs that you can't ignore? So this series looks at what your body could be telling you if you were listening. I'm Neil Fellows, and I'm Health Explorer, and I'm co-founder here at Total Wellness Club. And thanks for joining me as I delve into the possibility that bad health can be avoidable. Each year, the NHS spends around 16 billion on drugs and hospital treatment, while absence from work costs the economy around about 18 billion. In this series, we're going to explore the possibility that ill health could be avoidable. I'll be sharing my knowledge of exploring health, my family's health, and also my understanding from working with natural wellness providers for the last 15 years. And in this episode, we're going to start by looking at something that could affect you and your family as much as 12 times in the next year alone. We're going to look at the common cold. Let's look at how you could avoid colds altogether. Would you like to save yourself the sore throats, the runny noses, the stuffy noses, the coughing, the aches and the pains, the headaches and the sneezing that can go on for days? In a family with children in school, the average number of colds per child is as high as 12 per year, so one a month. And the kids bring all of these viruses home. Adults would suffer typically between 2 and 4 colds a year. And while it's true that you can catch a cold at any time during the year, not just winter, statistically, you are more likely to catch a cold somewhere between September and April. And colds can linger, can't they? They don't just go away overnight, although some colds, can go on for a couple of weeks. Most actually do clear up, though, in a week. But the cold will usually start maybe a couple of days after you've been exposed to the virus. And people with colds are most contagious for maybe 3 or 4 days after the symptoms begin, and they can be contagious for up to 3 weeks. So there's some signals and some understanding about colds that might help you, if you're around people that are contagious, or maybe for the next 3 or 4 days, maybe you need to just be a little careful, and I'll explain how we can do that in just a moment. Colds can make you pretty irritable as well, can't they? They certainly make me negative and very unresourceful. They can create underperformance at work, or even force you maybe to take a sick day off, which can be really painful for those people whose income is obviously reliant on them being in their job, especially those self-employed people. So colds can also mean loss of sleep and, say, grumpiness and unresourcefulness as well. So for those who catch colds regularly, it can really feel like you've just got over one cold only to go and catch another one. So the question is it true that when the virus comes, it just gets you and that's it, you've got no other options? Or could you avoid colds altogether, or stop a cold before it even gets started? So before I go on, I just need to give you a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I haven't been trained in anything to do with health. All I have is my own experience and some explorations to go on. And as I mentioned earlier, I've had about 15 years of working in and around the health and wellbeing profession, around other natural health, natural wellness providers. So they've probably rubbed off on me a little bit. So if I say something that's useful to you and you like the theory, feel free to use it. If what I say doesn't work for you, feel free to ignore it, but find what works for you. I mean, the whole thing for me is find what works for you and find what helps you to feel better. So if you have your own thoughts or experiences on this topic, or you're a health expert of some description, and maybe you've got your own learning on this topic, please use the comment section and share what you know, because then we can learn together. Now let's share our experiences about colds. So I remember that several years ago, just sharing my experiences of colds, several years ago, I had to attend an event in London. And I went into London by the train and then got on the tube, and was going from Paddington across to towards Temple, I think it was. And it's quite a long journey, about sort of 25, 35 minutes on the tube. And on that journey, my nose just began to absolutely stream. And from there on, I had the most miserable 48 hours ever, away from home and all of its home comforts, and with a stinking cold. And I had to be social and meet lots of people. Now, I remember I actually vowed there and then that I never wanted to have another cold. I said that to myself, I just hate this. I never, ever want to have one of these. And I really meant it. I wanted to avoid colds forever. So I really began to pay attention to how colds came about and how they felt in my body. I don't know about you, if you've ever noticed this, that when you get a cold, other people don't always get it. So going back a few years, I noticed that when I got a cold, it didn't always go through my family and friends, even though I'd maybe been around some of them while I had a cold and while it could be infectious. So this suggested to me that just because there's a virus, not everyone falls ill. And the fact that that is true suggests to me that I could avoid colds as well. Now, I wondered if that meant it was something to do with the immune system or the environment or the diet. So I began to explore. And what I noticed was when there was a cold in the air, maybe somebody who was maybe sniffing a lot and sneezing or blowing their nose, I began to take something called propolis as soon as I noticed that. This is like a bee pollen that's supposed to help stop cold symptoms. And when I've taken this, whenever I take it, I actually feel good for drinking this. So it actually, if it feels good, then there's probably a chance that it's doing me some good as well. So I always take that at the first hint that there's a cold around in the atmosphere. And I begin to notice the other hints in my body as well that the cold's brewing. So this might be like a swelling in the bridge of my nose, maybe some extra kind of sniffs here and there, maybe a few sneezes one after the other. And I also noticed some things that happen, maybe like house cleaning and gardening, maybe even a heavy workout. Anything in the body really that produced a lot of heat. This could potentially bring out the cold symptoms. So what I began to do was, if I felt cold symptoms working in my body, I would then start to avoid any kind of physical activity. So I would reduce my workouts and maybe postpone or minimize the chores when I felt even the slightest hint of a cold, and just sort of tailor things down and take things more calmly. Then one day I remembered that many years before I had had the remains of a cold, and I started to do some yoga, and I really focused on that flowing sequence. They call it vinyasa sequence. If you know yoga, maybe you can correct me if I got that wrong. I was doing this sequence and really focusing on the breathing for about 10 minutes, and then the symptoms pretty much vanished within that time, and my sinuses were clear for the first time in days. And it stayed that way for a good couple of hours. So now, as soon as I feel any symptoms of a cold coming on, I make sure that I breathe really deeply. I also noticed that stress can bring out a cold as well. So if I'm busy with work with a cold, a cold's more likely to come out when I'm busy. So I know if a cold's in the air, then I need to breathe more consciously and more deliberately and slow things down. So if maybe there was a discussion or a debate, maybe with the kids, for example, when they're in their teenage, I would just kind of say, okay, let's talk about this later. So I wouldn't get involved or drawn into the stress of the situation. And with work, I know that colds in the past have come out when I've had a day of clients back to back. Or they'll also come out just after a presentation as well. So these are things where I'm giving a lot of energy to another person or group of people. And obviously there's a lot of nervous energy sometimes involved, especially with a presentation. So the stress can actually generate quite a lot of heat in the body. So I began to handle these kind of presentations and also client days in a more relaxed manner, especially during the winter. And then make sure, if I can, between client sessions, I would do something that would help to replenish my energy, or certainly as soon as the presentation or the client work is finished, and I can do that then. So the other way that stress would come out is through travel. That's brought a cold on more than once for me. And so when I travel now, I never rush. I try and give myself plenty of time to be somewhere. And if the sun's out and let's say I'm heading into London, I might just take a nice, slow, long walk along Hyde Park and maybe catch the tube later. And then that way I can avoid some of the rush and enjoy some extra fresh air as well. I also noticed that ginger cleared my sinuses and is actually packed with vitamin C. So I began to juice up large quantities of ginger and freeze it in kind of ice cubes. And when I notice some cold symptoms or feel the need for a boost, I can just go and grab a couple of cubes and drop them into the hot water. And I do that twice a day. Give you a little bit of a warning here though. Ginger has got a very powerful flavour, and when you put it in hot water, obviously that gets even stronger. So it is a bit of an acquired taste. You could start off with 1 cube if you like, maybe twice a day. You could dilute it a little bit more if that works for you, but just giving you a little bit of warning. I found that 1 cube wasn't actually enough for me. 2 cubes was actually what it took, but you experiment with it and find out what's right for you if you want to try that. I've also noticed that before a cold comes out, I get an increase in bodily energy, and until I knew what it was, I actually misused that. And in hindsight, I now see that energy as my body turning all of its attention and energy towards stopping a virus. So when you feel that, just pause for a little while and let your body fight that virus off. It's quite subtle, but that moment, that 30 minutes or so, can literally be the difference between having a cold and having sort of a couple of weeks of sneezing and coughing and headaches and feeling generally a bit crappy, and actually allowing it to sail right by you. So I went 4 years and had just 2 colds in that time. And then I went 3 years and had no colds, but just a few symptoms here and there, but nothing full blown. And then last year, when I broke up for Christmas last year, I popped round to have a drink with my dad. And I don't drink an awful lot of alcohol, but on this day, I had a pint with him. And within a couple of minutes of drinking that beer, a cold just literally poured out of me. And there was nothing that I could do to stop that at that time. And I was just left asking myself, well, how did that happen? Well, I had a couple of stressful days just before, done quite a bit of traveling and worked a little bit late as well. And then diets can change as well as you lead into Christmas, can't they? I normally eat a relatively low sugar diet, but in the build up to Christmas, I did relax quite a bit. So Total Wellness Club really is all about avoiding preventable illness. And it's not about being the health police, it's about being real. And it's about getting more right than wrong and having really good, consistent habits. It's not about perfection, it's about reality and managing reality around you. So sometimes we do want a bit of comfort food, don't we? And sometimes that can feel good. But you have to know that with every decision you make, there is a consequence. And with sugar and alcohol, there definitely is consequences for most of us, because sugar has a massive impact on your immune system. Now, I've heard that a teaspoonful of sugar can actually knock out your immune system for about 6 hours. So imagine this, right? If you have crunchy nut cornflakes for breakfast, or you've got your Weetabix and you put sugar on it, and then maybe have a cup of coffee with sugar in it as well, and then at lunchtime you have a sandwich, and then maybe you have more sugar with tea or something like that, and then you have dessert, and then maybe more tea and coffee, and maybe even some alcohol during the evening. In this case, your immune system could literally be knocked out right from breakfast, right maybe until midnight or even 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And then if you add stress and you add a virus in the air, you can see how easy it would be for a virus to catch hold of you. So I've shared how I've reduced the number of colds I've had. I used to get about 3 or 4 colds a year. So in the last sort of 7 years or so, that would have been sort of 21 to 28 colds. But I've only had 3 colds in the last 7 years. So I'm really happy with that. So I've shared how I notice colds and how I notice the signs of the colds in the air, and how I notice them, how that feels within my body, and what I then do to avoid colds. I've explored the impact of stress and physical exertion and diet, and I've looked at the impact that sugar and alcohol can have. I've also given you some techniques like breathing carefully, slowing down, avoiding stress, propolis and ginger as well. But what about you? I'd love to hear your views. Do you have a lot of colds, or do you have very few colds? And if you get lots of colds, what one thing could you do to take away with you from this Facebook Live? What could you take away, and what could you try? Also, if you don't get many colds, what are your secrets? Because I'd love to know, and I'm sure everyone else maybe watching this video or reading the comments would love to know as well. So please share your thoughts and your insights so we can all learn and improve our health together. My business, Total Wellness Club, is all about helping to solve the pain of avoidable ill health. We've developed a platform within Total Wellness Club called Questly, which is free for you to join, and it's all about helping you to think about your health at a very deep level. Good health starts with developing your awareness, getting clear on what you know and also what you don't know, and having a vision of how your future health looks, and then taking consistent habit-based action to get you there. So Questly is free for you to join, and it will help you to identify 10 areas of your health, and then the area of your health that you really need to focus on. And Questly then looks with you in more detail. It takes you on a quest to help you improve that area of your life. So you can register for Questly by going to questly.life. You can go there right now. So it's questly.life, Questly, questly.life. And if you have any particular health issues you need help with, you can always let us know, and we can point you in the direction of a helpful resource or a professional that's received great reviews on the Total Wellness Club platform who could potentially help you solve that problem. So that's what I wanted to share with you on this Facebook Live. Sorry, we weren't able to actually do this live because we had some connection issues, but I hope you found the content really useful. See you later.